I'd like to share a couple of slides showing a little bit of experience in global entrepreneurship in this company, Gstamp. I've been working for Gstamp for the last 12 years right now in the automotive industry I'd say, for longer than 30 years now. Automotive industry is a very competitive one, really competitive nowadays. You can see and you can listen a lot about China invading all markets. So we are struggling of keeping our competitiveness worldwide in a higher level. I really would be pleased to share this kind of experience with you. I'd like to start with offering some dimension what's the Gstamp and the international experience I've been through. Currently, I'm in a global position, because Gstamp is a Spanish company, working the headquarters, and I'm here in charge of the complete manufacturing system development, process development, and manufacturing system. Here from Spain, we develop worldwide the projects, sharing with the teams, the local teams worldwide, what would be the content, what would be the strategy that we have to implement, what we're going to do. And this is something that I'd like to give to you a complete overview. As you can see, we produce many different components in the vehicle, body wide, the structural ones. We have bumpers, we have battery box, we have closures. Battery box is a quite recent product in our portfolio, because the electrical vehicles, it's really booming in Europe. You have a lot of projects now with many customers from Volkswagen, from Porsche, Audi, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Renault. Lots of customers, they are looking forward to have a partner in the battery box. Battery box is a quite special product because of the electrical vehicle requirements. They are a little bit higher than the standard body-in-white components. As you can imagine, it's really a lot of related to safety requirements, and it gives to us a huge responsibility whenever planning this process and the manufacturing concept for this kind of product. Chassis, you have the subframes, control arms, links, twist beams, whatever you have for linking the wheel, okay, to the body in white. So this kind of company, they are particularly difficult to design because of very tight package, and they are particularly critical in terms of safety, because at the end of the day, they are connecting the wheel. If it leaves, if it fails, if it cracks, there is a huge accident. It's a big problem with these kind of components. And we have another business unit in our company, which is pretty much related to doors and openings, the hinge, power systems, door checked. This is a very specific and particular business unit because of the fact that they have special assets or special equipments necessary to produce, and they haven't shared the same assets as chassis components and body-in-white components. Regarding to this international development, Gstamp is a quite fast-growing company. It started in 1997, so it's quite new. It's quite young if you compare with traditional automotive companies, mainly tier ones, the suppliers that deliver directly to the OEM, to our customers, and has grown very aggressive in terms of sales. But I'd like to highlight mainly it's naturally that it started in close companies in South America. A lot of companies bought over there, and Germany. They started the international footprint over there in 2001. They faced a quite significant growing, and after that some acquisition in the United States, so expanding. At this moment it's quite funny because mostly of the main executives in Gstamp, they couldn't speak even in English, so it was quite difficult for them. It was I'd say easier to speak in Portuguese, in Spanish of course, but German, United States was really a challenge for them, and they moved forward with a very fast-growing condition. As you can see in the emerging markets, Korea, India, China. China was very important, I would say, first step over there. And Turkey is a really huge operation in Turkey. We have around 8 plants over there nowadays, and it's very important and significant growing. It's important to mention that at this moment, the model used to grow was fundamentally acquisitions worldwide, but also some joint ventures. This is the first very successful joint venture with Beischlik. Beischlik is a family-owned, used to be a family-owned company, as well as Gestamp, also family-owned at that moment, and both companies joined. This is a really complex joint venture because you have two different cultures working together. It's I would say Spanish culture and the Turkish company culture. It's very challenging, this joint venture, but quite successful. Then we have the acquisition in 2010, 2011. We moved forward for very important German companies acquisition. ThyssenKrupp in Europe, mainly the automotive business. You know that ThyssenKrupp produce elevators and produce steel. Then Gestamp took care about the automotive brand, okay? Only the portion related to automotive components. Edscha as well is a very important German company that was also acquired by Gestamp, and this has faced a significant growing. I joined this company exactly at this moment when ThyssenKrupp was bought by Gestamp. I was working in ThyssenKrupp, and because of this acquisition, I was invited to join the Gestamp company. A short curiosity is that in Brazil, particularly, the ThyssenKrupp group was acquired by a huge automotive company called Magna. It's a Canadian OEM, very powerful. It's one of the main competitors we have, very respectful company. At the end of the day, I joined Gestamp. Then, as you can see, it was pretty much, it started in South America because of I'd say the culture. Gestamp is Spanish, in Portugal, South America. Then one acquisition in Germany, extending to United States, then expanding towards Asia. It was quite significant there. Then buying some companies in Germany. You know, the German, they're really proud of their industry. They're really strong in the industry. It was quite difficult to fit together a Spanish company with a German company, but it was a really nice, really interesting experience at the end of the day. Then we had another partner. There was mainly in America, I would say North America and South America, Mitsui, a huge Japanese investor company. They acquired 30% of a Gestamp in America. It was very important because with this partnership, it was possible to grow significantly in the United States. So we reached 2017, the base or the global footprint, able to launch Gestamp and perform the IPO. The company at the end of the day was quite mature, and it was a proper moment to, I would say, to perform the IPO and receive the proper investments to allow the next step. Then it keeps extending. It was very important, the operation in Romania. Romania is, as you might know, we have a significant operation of Ford, and you have a Renault, mainly the brand of Renault called Dacia. They are in Romania, and Japan was a very important first step on this country. It was created a development center, and the first hot stamping line over there. It was very important to gain a significant presence in Toyota business. Toyota, Honda, they are very important customers for us, and you know, it was really quite important to have a local contact in Japanese language over there with the same equivalent culture. And because of this office, it was quite interesting to see the expansion we faced with towards Japanese customers with this approach. There is a joint venture called BHAP. This joint venture is in China, made in Beijing area. There is a big, quite big plant, big production site over there. It belongs to this joint venture. When it's split between Gestamp and BHAP, a Chinese company. It was time in 2020, we faced huge coronavirus, a huge break in the complete industry, in the complete supply chain. We faced a very serious situation. Business everywhere faced a tremendous downturn. At that moment, it was really difficult. but I believe it was really good to adjust ourselves, to make ourselves very effective, very lean. It was very difficult moment, 2020, 2021, but afterwards we started growing again. However, as you can see, here comes the electrical vehicle. It was a tremendous paradigm change. Nowadays, we are moving to a more sustainability business and concept. And this is driving us to a kind of a higher level product development kind, which is a battery box. Is it clear? Please, I adjust to you.
Yes, it's clear. I believe it's at a great pace.
Just to mention the kind of a process and technology we use to produce those products. We're mainly a steel-based company, very, I would say, hard process, hard technology. You can go from hot stamping, which is pretty old kind of technology, but it has faced a significant evolution with new materials, mainly high-strength steel materials, and cold stamp. Cold stamping mainly is quite old. Hot stamp is 20 years old, but growing fast, because of the requirements requiring to crash. There is a possibility of stamping materials with a yield strength around 1200 or 1400 megapascal. So it's very, very important technology to ensure that in your vehicle, many B pillar, C pillar, A pillar, bumpers, we have the quite suitable material to resist against crash requirements. So cold stamping is quite old, but as I said, a great evolution with the new materials, new mainly regarding to press technology, very high speed technology with lubricants, with surface treatment. I'd say the OE, as a measure of efficiency in the manufacturing system in our equipment, has grown significantly with this kind of technology. So even being quite old, you can see a huge evolution on this technology. Then we have hot forming, hydroforming, welding, assembly, a lot of very nowadays automatized, a lot of automatic systems we developed. Okay, also we have a joint venture in Bulgaria, which is Eten, regarding to aluminum extrusion. Then we have tooling, surface treatments, these different technologies. And the challenge here is how you deploy the complete set of technologies and knowledge worldwide. We will implement this kind of technology in different countries, because it's not the same when you go to Mexico. Know that you have the kind of a supply base knowledge or degree of maturity level within the engineering in the team. And when you go to India or go to Japan or go to Turkey, they are completely different, I'd say, companies, cultures, and you have to adapt this kind of process. This is the growth. Now, just to have a figure, until 2023, as I mentioned, we were growing significantly, but of course, then we crashed towards the crisis in the automotive industry and the paradigm change regarding to EV, electrical vehicle, and this drove the complete automotive industry in a very, very difficult moment, being bombed tremendously by Chinese competition. And you see that we can see clearly that in Chinese it's growing significantly, this market. And I would say our main task and our main challenge is how to join this, how we are going to get the automotive players in China and have them as a customer. So nowadays it's really a challenge in our side to try to get them to offer to them a competitive level the products we offer to other companies as well. We always have the ghost behind us, which is the complete manufacturing base that they have in China. They are really competitive. So to compete against them is Champions League. It's not an easy task. As you can see nowadays, we are around 12 billions turnover. Now we are around 43,000 employees. We have 13 R&D centers. So we merged some R&D centers. We have around 115 plants worldwide, distributed in 24 countries. This is our global footprint. This is how we are distributed. We distribute our organization fundamentally split between two major organizations. One is the manufacturing systems, no, the manufacturing plants. They are distributed according to the division. So for each division, we have a CEO, specifically CEO. So you can see that we have two major divisions in Europe. It's a huge amount of plants. We have 63 plants and one in Morocco. Morocco is the first plant that we are following the customers, Stellantis, PSA. We are following them in Kenitra. Kenitra is a really growing place in Morocco that they're producing from there, and we decided to build this plant. This was our last plant built in Europe. We have USA, Mexico, we have Mercosur. Each one that I'm showing here, only Africa that's included to Europe area. They are led by what we call division and CEO, and this colleague is in charge of the whole management locally. It's important to decide because there are some strategies they are drawn in a global perspective, but there are some execution and even local strategies that you have to adapt to local markets. So it's very important that these colleagues they have a high degree of autonomy, allowing them to feel the market locally and be able to respond properly and fast. If you try to manage a huge company, everything from Spain, we wouldn't succeed. You have to delegate or to give a high degree of autonomy in the local markets. But of course, you have the challenge in the other direction, which is whenever a customer wants us, or requests to us to produce worldwide, for example, Volkswagen, that we are going to produce in Europe, we are going to produce in Mexico, we're going to produce in Brazil, we're going to produce in Asia. Whenever you have to produce, whenever you have to launch those vehicles in different countries, we have to create some harmonization among the different sites, respecting simultaneously a global requirement because they develop a product following pretty much the global requirements and the execution being done locally. As you can see, our R&D centers, they are pretty much focused on offering solutions for the local customers. For example, R&D in North America is pretty much focused in General Motors, Ford trucks for the F family vehicles developed by Detroit, in Dearborn area by Ford, developed by Chrysler. The product development, process development, project management, they are very focused on attending these customers locally in the development area, but it's important to mention that they are going to develop a product to be applied globally. Let's go to take an example. GM developed in North America. We follow them during the development, but it might be that the platform developed by GM is going to be produced in the United States, in Brazil, in two different places. So we have to develop in one center, follow the development center and offer a solution in terms of product development. In parallel, develop solution in terms of offering suitable strategies in terms of producing those parts locally. So this is the reason for each center we are close to a customer, the core of the development center. For example, the area of Paris or Bilbao, those centers here, we are pretty much focused on development product with Peugeot, with Renault. We have very good colleagues that they speak French together with our customers. However, production-wise, it might be that we are going to produce everywhere. So Peugeot has a site in Brazil, has also some joint ventures in China, DPSA and CAPSA. They have two joint ventures in China that we produce for them, and they are going to produce in different plants in Italy with Fiat. They're going to produce in Saragossa with Opel, 2-3 years ago bought by Stellantis Group, and they are going to produce in Vigo because they have a very important PSA site, production site over there. So you develop into one center, but in parallel, we have to offer the solution to produce everywhere where the customer is located.
So I'm just going to then go in order here. Christian, why don't you go ahead?
Thank you, Gustavo, for this presentation. And my name is Christian. I'm from Peru. I'm in the last year of industrial engineering. And I wanted to know what is the reason behind of applying a production line for the local market and in parallel another production line, but international market. It makes sense to me that if I'm going to produce in for example, a market that is far from Spain, for example, and isn't it going to be like more expensive to produce a product that is going to be distributed in Spain in America?
Hello, thank you, Jason, and thank you, Gustavo, too. Really liked your presentation. And then it came to my mind, since this is a fast-growing industry, how is the industry adapting to automation and digital transformation? And what roles are becoming more important because of that?
You have been taking account the AI or artificial intelligence, this new technology. How are you projecting yourself in the future for combining those like technologies to the industry? Thank you.
I would like to ask, you presented us the timeline, and we could see partnerships and steps to growth that were taken beyond Gestamp itself. I would like to know, how can we identify the moment to invest on the partnerships and to take this approach of investing on the company's growth?
Thank you for the presentation. I really enjoyed it. I am Ana. I'm a political science student here in Colombia. I had this one question just for curiosity. You were talking about China and the whole idea of adapting to the new market and the competition as well. Do you guys have like any other big obstacles for like the growth of the company?
I'm Valeria. I'm a law student from Peru, from Pontificia Universidad Católica del Perú. And my question is about Latin America. How, in your opinion, can companies from regions like Latin America, Peru, compete in such a highly competitive global market?
Christian raised a very good, very important question. Christian, at the end of the day, there is a decision. The first decision to investigate is volume, okay? Because if you have a quite low volume, it's very difficult to support a new building or a new manufacturing system or a high investment over the locally. For example, we have a Volvo, and Volvo is produced in the United States in a system that is we send the parts, they export the parts, and they build the vehicle over there because they produce 60,000 Volvo cars a year in the United States. So it's quite local and very low volume. Under such certain scenario, it's very difficult, and you're right, to produce locally, okay, to invest locally and to produce locally. Therefore, the system we do with Volvo is to export. But this is very, I would say, exception. It's very rare, okay? Generally, in our customers like a Toyota, like Honda, like Volkswagen, like Stellantis, no, worldwide Peugeot or Renault, they have a quite important volume and they produce in different places. And whenever we produce a high volume, it's very important to be locally produced, because then I have two things. One is logistics. Another one is the capability you have of offering a good technical service over there, because you have a competence to produce and competence to support the customer, because it's not only delivering a product. You have issues in the field, you have warranty situations, you have claims, you have this constant cost improvement. You have to make yourself better. The customer requires it, and you have to have what we call local intelligence, a complete set of engineers and a production system able to respond during the 7, 8, 9 years product life cycle. And there is another point which is truly important, that we speak in the same language. And because of and you develop locally, you know, the complete market environment. You know, we stamped from steel, so they have steel makers, we have line builders, we have press machine suppliers. We have to develop a complete development in this area, because when you are talking about not only different countries, different regions worldwide, and you have to respond quickly, you must set a local operation. Otherwise, it's very complicated to operate from the 12 hours difference when we're talking from China to Brazil. BYD, for example, that they are building a plant over there. If we develop from China and we decide to produce from China and the customer is producing in Brazil, imagine that if you face a situation in the production site, you have a problem in the production site, the complete flow pipeline is contaminated. If you found a quality issue or something, imagine that you have 6 weeks lead time in the boat, in the ship, transporting from China to BYD. And you have this very late response out of the production line, the customer. The complete pipeline might be contaminated or might be a problem quality-wise. So you have to evaluate these different dimensions.
It was a really, really deep answer. Thank you.
Amanda, the automation and digital. Amanda, this is really important topic because you can think like if we are producing in a low-cost country, like for example, just Turkey or India, if I produce there, you could be more manual. It would make sense to make more manual. However, because of the huge quality requirements that we are facing nowadays, Amanda, more and more we are moving, we are shifting our production system to a lower variability level and a higher detection level, because you cannot deliver to the customer a failed product, okay, or what we call not okay product. In this regard, the complete system automation, even in low-cost country, and we are implementing a lot of strategies using machine learning for identifying, or for example, taking pictures and identify some features or potential failure modes that could be detected in a manufacturing system, and then we have to work on this product, either rework or scrap. But the main message is avoiding going to the customer. Artificial intelligence, we are working in the manufacturing system in many different dimensions. Quality detection, constant monitor the quality of your product. So we use a tremendous amount of information. We produce cycle times around 50 seconds. And our acquisition frequency is 1,000 hertz. So we take 1,000 points for each second, multiplied by 50. One single product must have a huge amount of information. This is the reason we have our complete big data system, just because we collect a huge amount of information, just because of this. There are some processes that we haven't investigated, we haven't found yet a manner to detect during the operation, and then we have to detect afterwards. OE, overall effectiveness equipment. So this is really a overall concept related to how efficient your system, and it's combined many different dimensions, like quality, like performance, like technical availability of the equipment, downtime, uptime, to monitor this portion, the performance, to monitor the part of related to the technical availability. If the equipment fails and stop your system, you have to have some equipment like this, because at the end of the day, we are continuously trying to identify what's the bottleneck. Then if you work on the bottleneck, at the end of the day, you can respond and make it restarting and adding.
Perfect, thank you.
Pablo, with AI, we have a huge traditional users, in terms of in the office, it helps me a lot. Claude or ChatGPT, they are not allowed in our company because of the simple concern of taking out some critical information. Our IT colleagues, they are working a solution which would be more closed to our system. But from a manufacturing perspective, I believe that our colleagues, we have a department called Industry 4.0, and they are in charge of the complete data analysis and collection, sensors development, and how to deal with this amount of information, the big data, and so on. David, partnership and growth. At this point, it could be a book. It's very difficult to decide this kind of situation, because sometimes you don't have enough money. Simple like that. So when you don't have enough money, you can try to find out another source of to get the money. But sometimes, as you have a strong partner and this business have a very close connection to our business in terms of assets availability, what the kind of equipment they have, if culturally they are similar, if our customers are the same, it might be that we could use this existing company as an initial leverage. And instead of start from the beginning as a kind of a green field, we start with a joint venture. It looks a reasonable decision. However, it's not easy decision. We have a lot of issues with our joint ventures. It's nice to talk, but everybody wants to be the boss. It's truly difficult, but we have quite good successful companies raised with this model. We have a couple of ones that were a disaster, that we had to stop immediately and assume the business directly or to buy this company because the joint venture strategy was a disaster.
Gustavo, thank you.
Anna, it's a difficult question. China adapting, how to adapt to the new market, what are the point of interest and so on. I believe nowadays China is one of the main partners. Our main interest in China nowadays is because the OEMs, the Chinese OEMs, are growing significantly. And we are very scared or concerned of being out of this boat. If you don't join these companies, it might be that we are going to be out of this boat. And this is a problem because these are companies that are facing a quite significant growing. The customers, sometimes in China, they have a different kind of a strategy, how they are financed by the government. You cannot see some figures, some financial figures and so on. It's not always truly transparent. So what we are really looking forward in China is to get a transparent partnership with some customers. BYD is one of them because BYD it's willing to go outside. They are building an operation in Brazil. They are building an operation in Spain, Hungary. So they are the kind of company we understand that we can support them because we develop in China and we use our base to produce to them. So this kind of business makes sense to us. There are some customers that they want to produce in China, place the car in a ship and export directly. So we have the opportunity of support them primarily in China. So this is a second priority customer. But China is growing and is very competitive. Whenever you have to have means of production in China to buy, I would say, painting lines or assembly lines, robots, they are offering nowadays, because of the huge volume they have, they are offering a quite competitive price. Strategically, we are trying to avoid to buy everything from China. So we have to try to keep some partners locally, but it's true that China is offering nowadays a very competitive price. Whenever you go to a higher technology, we try to do from Spain at this moment, because it might be that you create some differential, competitive advantage and so on. So we try to avoid sharing this. You cannot avoid too long, because whenever it goes to the market, it starts being copied somehow, or it can be copied. So we have to create another technology leap to move forward. But China, being really directly, it's offering very competitive condition nowadays, very low price for very high level equipment. What I truly would recommend is try to study the basics, the very basics, the engineering, finance, the very basic concepts, the technical concepts that are kind of universal language. Be humble, learning this. I would say it's very important, because whenever you try to go to another culture, whenever you try to steer a global company using a kind of imposition, I believe you lose the buy-in and the local buy-in, which is truly important to succeed in the implementation. With different countries, I try to handle in a technical base, respecting deeply the local condition of my local partner, and because they truly can add value to this. I believe we feel ourselves strong when we share our strategy and we listen from them, but we work in a technical and fundamental base. So have a hard knowledge is amazing to have soft skills, but it's very fundamental whenever you leave the university to try to consolidate the hard skills, because the hard skills give to you the confidence or the credibility to talk to your partners wherever they are.
Thank you, Gustavo.
Thank you, Gustavo.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Gustavo. Bye, everyone.
Bye.